You know what would be a really fun YouTube video? What if we had from 2 years ago a time capsule of what we used to think was going on in Last Epoch, and we could just like pick that up, open it up, and see what was going through our minds more than 2 years ago. Yeah, that would be pretty fun. So we just put up a video. We talked about Nerf Bingo, and we highlighted all the things that we thought were going to be nerfed back when we were playing this game in like June of 2022, and we made a bingo card for it. It was a fun thing to do in Discord as well. And now, 2 years after, so we're in like September 2024, we revisited that bingo card and we said, like, here, these are the things that have been nerfed, these things haven't been nerfed. And then we started talking about at the end of this video, what would a new bingo card look like if we made one right now? So today, we're going to make a brand new bingo card right now. This is going to be the next time capsule for some point in the future. Maybe we revisit this at 1.2 when that comes out sometime Q1 2025, or so they say, or we can just revisit this at a different point in time. So let's go ahead and do this. I have a bingo card up and ready to go, but instead of just showing you the bingo card right now, I'm going to load it into bingobaker.com because this is the first one that showed up on Google when I typed in bingo creation card. All right, got it. The first one that we're typing in here, these are things that some of these should be nerfed. Some of these might be nerfed and deserve it. And some of these probably, like, there's like 2 or 3 of these that don't necessarily need to be nerfed, but we ran out of things to fill in the 25 or the 24 blanks here. So like 1 or 2 of these might make you scratch your head. But there are things that like might be nerfed, depending on whether you're a gamer or you're a member of EHG. I don't know. You'll see with you. First thing here, I say this because like this one's kind of suspect. I don't think it needs to be nerfed, but it reminds me of something else. So Thorn Totem on Hit Idol. So there's a 4x1 idol, a long idol that Primalists can use that gives you Thorn Totem on Hit. And like, should this be nerfed? Does it need to be? Probably not. There are some people out there in the community who really love frying their own computers. So kudos to them. Let's try to make this a little bit bigger, just like that. We try to fry their own computers and make as many things happen on the screen as possible. Thorn Totem on Hit Idol kind of reminds me of the smite on throwing hit idols, the 2x2 idols that a paladin or that a sentinel has access to. And like, did it need to be nerfed? It was strong. It wasn't really that strong, but it was iconic. But they nerfed it, and I think they nerfed it for performance reasons. You know what I mean? So Thorn Totem on Hit, if it became more popular, I could definitely see it being nerfed in terms of performance because of all the nonsense that goes along with it. So like, does it need to be nerfed? No, I don't think so. But it's the first thing that we're putting on our 1.2 nerf list. Let's go ahead and write this up here. Let's 1.2 or later. Nerf Bingo. Nerf Bingo. There you go. B-I-N-G-O. I spend a lot of time with my kid these days. All right, so the next one here. This is kind of broad, and I don't know exactly what to nerf because I haven't played a Sork in patch 1.1 yet. So I'm going to write Big Mana Sork. And I don't know exactly what node needs to be nerfed in Sork, but the changes that were made in patch 1.1 for Sork made it just so much better than it's ever been in the past. They added more multipliers, they added new nodes to the skill tree, they added the thing that makes spark charges, they added more synergies, they added like damage taken from mana before health synergy. Like they added so many good things for Sork, like building, you know, not only 300 or 500, but 1,000 mana. And some people, like, you know, the build guides you read out there, people are saying, like, you know, this build really comes online when you get 1,500 mana, but you really want 2,000 mana. So these mana builds on a Sork, like, something about them is so fucking strong. And this should be the free spot. Maybe Big Mana Sork should be the free spot. But we're going to get back to different Sork stuff later. I don't have firsthand experience on it, but like looking in from my perspective, some part of the suite of damage here, or the suite of like how you build these characters, or maybe it's too easy to build mana, I don't know. But something around this is kind of a gimme. It's too broad. You'll see the other options or the other things we type in here. We're going to try to be more specific in the future. We'll be more specific like when we write the word Torment. This is not like Sonic Fissure or Warlock, it's just Torment. Torment got a lot of nerfs, and specifically it also got a huge nerf with the rework or, you know, readdressing of the Immolator's Ablation unique belt. But Torment is fucking strong. And even after getting nerfed so many times, I think it's still fucking strong. Does it need to be nerfed? I would be unsurprised if it remained unnerved and it was just like a strong thing for you to do. Because just because something's strong doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be gutted. And I recognize that. But like, is it too strong? Is it too easy? Is it like too synergistic and like you don't really need to solve problems? You just kind of do the Torment thing and your build's already very strong. I don't know. But I would be unsurprised to see Torment getting addressed again because I see the performance of the build is still very strong despite a lot of nerfs. So it could stay the same, but we'll see about this. Maybe I should put Torment in one of these spots so it doesn't hurt my bingo chances. We'll see. Speaking of that, next one up here it's actually a set item. And if you're playing along at home, I'll give you like 5 seconds. You can get which set item, which green set items are terrible for the most part, which one goes in the slot. You ready? Man, my typing skills. Invoker's Static Touch is it's a set ring. The entire set, kind of mid, doesn't really get used that often, but Invoker's Static Touch is one that gives you access to ward gained on hit against shocked enemies. And we saw so many sources of ward gain on hit nerfed in patch 1.1. A lot of things got caps on them. A lot of Rune Master got caps on it as well. And like Invoker Static Touch stands out to me as something that you could use to generate a whole bunch ward. People live in Twitch chat telling me, you leave Invoker Static Touch out of this, you fiend. Yeah, no, I'm not going to. I think this deserves a spot on the 24 here. So let's keep going. The next up for things that might be nerfed is Shadow Daggers. Do Shadow Daggers need a nerf? I'm not sure that they do. So they've been nerfed a couple times. In the previous video that we were talking about for what we made 2 years ago, we had Shadow Daggers on the list back then. And I said that Shadow Daggers got nerfed because the effectiveness of added damage got lowered from 450 to like 380 or so, what it is right now. But people in the YouTube comments reminded me that not only did they get nerfed in that regard, but they also got nerfed because of Shadow Dagger effectiveness. So Shadow Dagger effect, just like Bleed effect or Night effect, used to exist, and it was a more multiplier, and it would scale all of your flat damage, not just physical damage. And it was also a unique more multiplier instead of being a more multiplier that overlapped with your other sources of, physical shred or cold shred if you're playing a Morning Frost build, for example. So that was kind of like double nerfed in that regard, and I missed that. I forgot to mention it. So why are we putting it on the list here? Because I hate it? No, we're putting it on the list here because I hate it. I recently played a Razorfall build. Razorfall is a unique pair of boots that helps you generate even more Umbral Blades when you're jumping around as a Falconer build. And Shadow Daggers, to me, they're just kind of insidious. The more that you include them in your build, the more that you only want to include them in your build. I just wish there were other things to do instead. So, do Shadow Daggers necessarily need to be nerfed? I don't think so. But things like Umbral Blades, it's really hard to get flat critical strike chance for your Umbral Blades while also getting everything else that you need. So like I would like to play a crit Umbral Blades build, but then I need a whole bunch of critical strike chance to go along with it. It kind of makes me want to dual wield and put maybe a Trader's Tongue in my offhand to get that, big 10 or 13 flat critical strike chance from that new unique dagger that got introduced to the game. And that makes you dual wield, which makes you take increased damage. And I don't want to take increased damage. Like, especially during this 1.1 refresh event, monsters hit really hard. And I don't want to take increased damage. So what could change in this regard? They could remove the dual wield penalty. They could add flat crit into the Umbral Blades skill tree. They could continue releasing more items like the Phantom Grip unique ring that has flat critical strike chance on it to give you more options for itemizations for flat critical strike chance. But at the end of the day, this might be a personal one, but I could see Shadow Daggers being nerfed again. Yes, they nerfed it with Umbral Blades being nerfed to only have a 60% application rate on the spinning thing, but the exploding Umbral Blades still have the 100% chance to apply Shadow Dagger and hit. So, it's a lot of talking, but it's a personal vendetta, stupid thing. Let's keep going to the next one. This is kind of a gimme. So maybe I should put the gimme like right here or something, but we already had the big mana Sork. Let's go ahead and put Volatile Reversal here. So we know that Volatile Reversal is going to be nerfed at some point, but like, it's got to be nerfed. All of the damage, most of the damage, a significant amount of the damage of every single Sentinel build is wrapped up in volatile reversal. So are they going to be able to successfully nerf volatile reversal builds in patch 1.2? Because we know it's going to happen. Volatile reversal builds, every Sentinel build. Are they going to be able to successfully rework volatile reversal while not gutting all of Sentinel? That's a good question. I hope so. But I do think that's a real question because there's so much damage in here. How could they possibly nerf this correctly or rework this correctly? I don't know. Maybe. No. Okay, so next one. Next one up here. This might be one that you wouldn't put on your bingo card, but I'm definitely going to put it on mine. And I've called this an item that I'm surprised is in the game, because if you use the item properly, nobody uses the item properly. The only thing this item tends to do is one-shot the end game bosses, like Aberoth. So I'm going to put Event Horizon right here. If I were making a video game, I wouldn't include an item that says, like, one-shot the end game pinnacle boss, and no one uses it except to one-shot the endgame pinnacle boss. That's not an item that I would make in my video game, and I'm kind of surprised that Event Horizon, this giant two-ended mace, works like that. I think if they wanted to make Event Horizon a more fair item, they could reduce the movement speed penalty, because that feels like shit, and then they could also reduce some of the payoff for it. So like reduce some of the penalty, reduce some of the payoff, and make it a more balanced thing. Because as it is, it's so much goddamn damage, and maybe we don't need this item to exist. So that's my opinion on it. We're going to keep going. This one, I feel like Big Mana Sork, nerf it. Volatile Reversal, nerf it. This following one is so offensive to me. It's more offensive than Event Horizon. I'm literally surprised that it's in the game and remains in the game. It feels like a different video game now that we have the zombie potion belt in the game. This is a experimental affix that summons volatile zombies when you use a potion. And most oftentimes you see this paired with like a Lich or a Warlock build, most often a Lich build, using Sacrifice, blowing up these zombies, and using a Jungle Queen Chaps to have a whole bunch of potions in your arsenal. And you just potion, one shot. And it's incredible amounts of damage. And I don't get why it's in the game. It's funny, it's cute, but like, we've been there, we've done that. Why is it still here? I would love to see this nerfed. The next up, going to G2. G2, we have an item that Twitch chat's going to be mad at me for mentioning. And that is an item that is maybe a little bit too ubiquitous. And maybe it doesn't belong here. And that is Blood of the Exile. I can already feel Twitch chat judging me. Blood of the Exile has a lot of movement speed on it. It's like a tier 1 base. It has damage for those bleed builds that exist out there, but it also has like 10 dexterity, 10 strength, 10 intelligence on it. And then you can like LP more onto it. Like you can LP, Hybrid Life, you LP more movement speed and get like, a playable amount of movement speed. You can LP more intelligence onto it if you're an in-stacking build. I think Blood of the Exile has been popping up in too many builds. If I were in charge, listen, Last Epoch is not a balanced game. There's a lot of stuff that needs work in Last Epoch. There's bugs, there's balance, there's extreme outliers like Big Mana Sork and Volatile Reversal. Blood of the Exile is like, it's a fine touch nerf that it needs. It needs a little bit less of something on it, or maybe a little bit higher of an LP level. But I think, is this supposed to be the end game boots? Is it supposed to be? Like, I don't know. It's so strong. It's up to 12 of each, 12 int, 12 dex, 12 strength. That's so much. I see it pop up in builds that I wouldn't expect to see it pop up in. And not only that, but because it has so many attributes on it, it also helps you work toward your Red Ring of Atlaria for the damage reduction. And I don't ever see people use Foot of the Mountain, which has up to like 12 all attributes on it. So in terms of attributes, it's a better payoff. But that thing doesn't have movement speed on it. So like you need movement speed. Like movement speed is kind of the name of the game. So Blood of the Exile, I see it a bit too often. I would be unsurprised to see it touched at some point. But like, this is like a fine grain touch. It is not like a sweeping offensive thing like some of these other ones are over here. But let's keep going. We have Wraith Lord helmet. It's the Wraith Lord. All right, so Wraith Lord helmet. What is there to say about this? It deals giga damage, and I don't like it. Is that it? Wraith Lord helmet deals giga damage. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Wraith Lord kind of takes the place of what the old Wraith builds were doing. The old Wraith builds were like off-screening things, and they were totally insane. But not only were those nerfed a little bit, as we saw in like this previous video when we discussed Wraiths. Where's Summon Wraith? It's in here somewhere, right? Summon Wraith, Flame Ward, Ashen Crown. Summon Wraith, right there. There we go. So like it's been nerfed, but now this stupid David Harbour helmet. David Harbour still refusing to come on the podcast, by the way, and talk about the crimes he's committed by introducing this item to the game. Yeah, I would like to see this one nerfed. Let's get that out of there. Next one here, we have another line item that was on our previous bingo card, and like I'd be unsurprised if this next one got nerfed, but I don't think it needs nerfed. I think we need to make sure that this remains non-permanent in terms of a buff. When Rune Master had access to permanent Flame Ward, I think that was pretty fucking stupid. But I think non-permanent Flame Ward and like having this as a player, what is the word I'm looking for? Not player power, but like player skill. Like, you know, you click Flame Ward at the right time. You have it up when you need it. You don't have it up when you don't need it. It's not automated. It's not up all the time. I think it's fine, but it sure does give an amazing amount of defenses to it. When you don't have Flame Ward up, you're kind of squishy. You don't really have that much defense available. But having Flame Ward available to you on demand, like having 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 charges of it, like you oftentimes build on your mage builds, Flame Ward's a pretty fucking strong defensive steroid. And like what they could do is like raise some of the defenses in other places and lower the defense out of Flame Ward. I don't think they need to do that, but I'd be unsurprised if I saw Flame Ward nerfed at some point. So let's go ahead and do this. Next one is kind of a gimme along with Big Mana Sork. I said Big Mana Sork was kind of too broad, and I'm not happy with calling it too broad. But the next one here is the Sork Spark Charge node. Let's go Sork 40 mana Spark Charge. That thing, the 40 mana, like your skill costs 40 mana, it applies a spark charge on hit. I would be unsurprised to see this nerfed. That seems so goddamn strong. If it weren't for Frostclaw, would you still feel like this node's insane? Because Frostclaw hits like, 40 times a second or something, depending on your cast speed. Or, at least it hits 6 times per cast. Or 5 times per cast, 6 times, 5. I think it's 5 times per cast. But like, it's so strong. I guess it's not 4 times per cast because to get the 40 mana cost, you need to have the recast and whatnot. Would this node look as offensive if it weren't for Frostclaw? I think that yet is to be seen because we haven't been able to unpair those things yet. But this node to me strikes me as something that could definitely be changed. You could either like raise the requirement for it, like you could lower the mana cost on a Frostclaw so that it can't hit the 40 mana mark. You could raise the mana requirement on this. You could say like 50% chance to apply Spark Charge on hit. That kind of loses some of the luster of the node though. But something around this node, I'd be like, I'd be happy to see that nerf. All right, free spot done. We're almost halfway done, and only SD for Falconer so far. We'll get to the other Falconer stuff right here. So we're just gonna write the word bird. And I don't know what bird needs to do. I think Falconer as an entire mastery to me is kind of boring because it seems like it just kind of builds itself. Like it's always good, you're always dealing good damage, you're not really solving any problems. And the Falconer builds that I played, and like listen, I've never played a bird damage build. And I'm calling out bird damage specifically, even though I never specifically played it. But Falconer builds seem to just like all the problems and all the issues of a Falconer build seem to be like pre-solved for you. And I'm not a big fan of that. The bird builds, for example, or in particular, the bird builds in particular, they scale off of so many different skill trees. So not only do you get the more multipliers from falconry, but you also get more multipliers from like your other skills at the same time. So like, there's tons and tons of overlap, which is particularly offensive for things like for dive bomb, whether you're doing it for crit or you're doing it for bleed. And then you get falconry plus like resets off explosive traps and whatnot. You just have so much synergy baked into like your bird dealing damage. And we know that, like, during the 1.0 event, for example, was it 1. No, it's 1.1. During the 1.1 launch, when there was like a rush to kill Aberoth as fast as possible, it was just a bleed Falconer build that had, very low defense, just invested into damage, and just like basically off-screened the endgame boss. So we have examples right now of like how easy this thing is to put together as like, for starting from 0 build for the bleed version. But like Bird, does it need to scale so goddamn hard? Does it need to have all of your bleed chance? Does it need to scale 1% more damage per dexterity? Does it need everything? Does it really need everything? I don't know. So we're going to put Bird here, but I mean like Bird damage builds or like Falconry as a skill, somewhere around that suite of skills. So like when I look at Bird, I kind of think about Big Mana Sork. Like, I don't know what exactly it is, but the whole suite of those things coming together is so strong. Next up here is, this is a Primalist one, and I guess I'll wait like 2 or 3 seconds for you. But there's a Primalist skill or a Primalist like way of building things that you could either nerf damage or you could nerf the skill tree for it, or you could nerf the range because it seems to off-screen everything. So that's Storm Bolts. And this is not Storm Stacks, because every time that I've tried to build around Storm Stacks from Gathering Storm, I've been pretty disappointed by it. Which is weird, because when I first saw the Gathering Storm skill tree launched in 1.0, I thought Storm Stacks were going to shine more than Storm Bolts are. But I don't see any good Storm Stack build. I don't see anyone like using, Earthquake to discharge your Storm Stacks, or what's the skill called? The one that attacks really fast. Tempest Strike. It's weird that it used to have 0 attack speed on it. But Tempest Strike, like discharging your Storm Bolts. I know these things are possible. And I know that people have played these things. And I've seen people play them. When I say, like, I don't see people playing these, I don't see them putting up numbers. I don't see them being, like, particularly strong builds. And contrary to that, using Storm Bolts, particularly procced off of Tornado, particularly combined with Werebear form, giving you insane range, because like Tornado, Lightning Bolts have range on them, and then they also get range from the Gathering Storm skill tree, and maybe that's a bug that it shouldn't double dip like that for the range if you take both those nodes, but you can off-screen things, and they deal so much damage, and they have lots of synergy built into them. You could even nerf Storm Bolts by nerfing the synergy between like Rage, Generation, and then using that for more damage in the Gathering Storm skill tree. You can nerf that as well, but something around this needs to be nerfed. This build's like giga strong. Next up over here, we're kind of looking at the Big Mana Sork. We were talking about this Spark Charge thing a second ago, but in the interest of being as specific as possible, I'm gonna write Frostclaw, but it's not just Frostclaw. And it's not just the fact that Frostclaw hits so many times with one cast. I'm going to write Frostclaw Ailment Penalty. So I think this is maybe the issue. Like, having it hit 6 times is interesting for like crit, I guess, because crit Frostclaw is good, believe it or not. But I think the ailment penalty is what I would suspect should be nerfed on Frostclaw. Yeah, it hits so many times, but we saw with Shadow Daggers, for example, like this spinning Umbral Blades has a ailment penalty on it of like 40% less chance to apply any ailments on hit, and those also include Shadow Daggers on hit, which is a sizable nerf to your Shadow Dagger application rate if you're playing spinny Umbral Blades. Then, of course, the Explodey has 100%, like 100% chance, like we said before. But the fact that you can hit with Frostclaw and you can turn it into like 5 or 6 different hits, and each of those has a 100% chance to apply an ailment on hit, that's insane. Like, we've seen really good Ignite builds, we've seen really good Frostbite builds, and Spark Charges, believe it or not, Spark Charges are an ailment. They're an ailment that proc a skill that has no parent skill. Never mind. But the ailment penalty, if you introduced an ailment penalty on the multi-hit Frostclaw stuff, you would hit Spark Charges, Frostbite, and then Ignite as well. And like all 3 of those are pretty insane. So yeah, it hits a lot. And like, yeah, the crit version's good, but maybe the crit version's okay. And maybe the ailment stuff needs to have nerf on it. Things that hit multiple times tend to have an ailment penalty on them. Look at Warpath, look at Spinning Umbral Blades, and look at even the, I call it Spirit Fingers because I don't know the actual name of the skill, but the default skill that Spriggan Form gets access to, Spirit Thorn. I think Spirit Thorns is the name of it. That has an ailment penalty on it as well. I'd be unsurprised to see Frostclaw get an ailment penalty at some point as well. Next up, does this one need a nerf? I don't think so. Does Twitch chat think it needs a nerf? Yes, enough to include it on this list. If Twisted Heart needs a nerf, it's probably the implicit that needs a nerf. It's up to 20% increased HP, and you use Twisted Heart to get the word generation, or to get the +1, or to get the cast speed, or to get the strength, if you're a strength stacking build. Like I played a EQ dot Primalist build recently, and I was stacking strength, and I only used Twisted Heart because it had strength on it. And I guess it also had % increased HP. Like, it has so much text on it. The defining thing about Twisted Heart is that it has that, you know, sacrifice life, gain ward thing. Does it also need everything else in the world that goes along with it? I don't think so. Maybe that's the point. It doesn't need that much text, does it? So, I don't know. I'm going to put Twisted Heart on here. I don't think it needs a nerf, but I'd be unsurprised to see some of that superfluous text removed. When I say superfluous, I mean, like, remember the one-handed axe cleaver solution? That thing had so much text on it. It has, like, you know, +1 to skills, intelligence equal to your strength, more damage against bleeding, and it has a bunch of flat damage on it. But, like, you're only using it for one of those. You're using it because it has the intelligence equals your strength. Like, everything else is kind of fluff. And then, just like what we're talking about, EHG removed one of those lines of text. They removed the more damage against bleeding monsters. And that's fine, because it still has its core identity, and it's still a perfectly suitable item. So when you can nerf something like that, and it still remains very useful, I think that's a good nerf. Next up is something that we had on the Nerf Bingo card from 2.5 years ago, and it's still going to be on the list. I think Ward makes this not look as insane as it is, but like Ward's been toned down. We see a lot more life builds. We see some hybrid builds finally, and I think that's really neat. But Anomaly has two things going against it here. Anomaly is the highest level skill that Void Knights get access to. And Anomaly has all these nodes for dealing damage and speeding up ailments and sending enemies into the future and doing all these cool whatso things. But the like 99% of builds, especially 99% of good builds, will use Anomaly for the time bubble. They put the Anomaly on their head and they gain cooldown, attack speed, crit, cast speed, leech, and increased leech, which is just a more multiplier to your leech. Anomaly is nuts. Anomaly is so good, and the vast majority of the Anomaly skill tree is completely wasted. Will Anomaly be nerfed, or will it be fixed? Will it be addressed in some way? Hopefully. We know that in patch 1.2, there's going to be some interesting stuff happening in terms of Devouring Orb. That's exciting. So we know something is going to happen with Sentinel, and specifically with Void Knight. Maybe Anomaly gets addressed at that point. But I think you'd find a lot of people who are like, Anomaly, it's a garbage skill. Like, who cares about that? Or like, that's not nearly as offensive as, you know, Big Mana Sork or Flame Ward or Spark Charges or Bird. But like, it's incredibly strong skill. Someone in Twitch chat just said Anomaly is basically Mage Blood. It's really fucking strong. It does so much for you. And there's only one way you ever use it. You never really make any decisions when it comes to Anomaly. You just click everything on the right side and you ignore the top, the bottom, the left. Next up. Whew. I'm going to get somebody mad at me whose name is Lizard IRL. Oh my god, I started typing Lizard IRL. Hybrid health idols. Idols are cool and they're interesting. Some of them are build enabling, like Thorn Totems on hits. Some of them give you cool ways of scaling damage. They have interesting text on them, which dynamically change how your skills are going to be used. There's some really cool, interesting idols. There's some boring idols out there, but there's some really cool, interesting idols. But every time you use an idol that isn't a hybrid HP idol with like 5% increased HP and 30 flat HP, you're kind of making a bad choice. Because hybrid health idols are so dumb. Should they be in the game? I suspect that the answer is no. Hybrid health idols, do we really need to have both % HP and flat HP on the same idol? I suspect that you could address this by just removing it. by just removing the ability to roll both of those affixes. Like you could only have either percent HP or flat HP, or just take them off altogether. Just, fuck them. You're way too strong. These idols can give you like 1500 HP, and it's so boring. Like there's so much room for creativity with the idol system, but as long as these exist, it's really going to stifle all of that creativity. Doesn't belong there. Let's move on. The next one is a wand. The last time we talked about wands, we talked about Marinera's Lost Pasta, which it deals a lot of necrotic damage, but it turns out it's pretty fine in the current state of the game. There's some really good uses for Marina's Lost Soul, but that's not the one we're talking about here. This one is Wrong Warp. Is Wrong Warp inherently too strong, or does it just... Is it inherently too strong, or is it the wand that just works the best with Sork builds right now? I think it's just the wand that happens to work best with Sork builds right now, because the Mad Alchemist Ladle is really something that you only see pop up on Spark Charge builds these days. By and large, like there's some other uses for it, but basically Mad Alchemist Ladle was like Giga OP, but like it's been toned down. Wrong Warp remains. I think Wrong Warp is like what, basically all the Sork builds are using. Is the percent increased damage based off of movement speed too good? Maybe. If there's any line of text that needs to be toned down, it's probably that one. But I suspect that Wrong Warp is just looking OP because it's like it's a pretty generic wand and it works well with what the Giga OP Sork builds are doing right now. Yeah, there's no choice in it. It does. It makes you move at a borderline acceptable speed. It really tells you a lot about Last Epoch, doesn't it? Yeah, so maybe just like more competition needs to be introduced for wands. Maybe the percent increased damage scaling based off movement speed needs to be toned down a little bit. I don't think it's inherently OP, but I think it's strong enough and prevalent enough in like strong builds that I think it deserves a spot on this list. Being invulnerable 1/5 of the time is pretty good. So good observation. All right, next up. We have our big mana Sork on the top. We have our Sork 40 mana Spark Charge. We've got our Wrong Warp, and we've got even more Sork stuff. Fuck you, Sork. All right, we've got Static Orb mana scaling. Is there really much to say about this? We have all the new mana nodes and all the new mana synergies available in Sork, and then we have Static Orb, which makes perfect use of them. It does so much goddamn damage. The best way to describe Static Orb's state in the game right now is that we have plenty of builds that are bugged and can one-shot or two-shot Aberoth, the new pinnacle boss. We have things like Event Horizon, like these meme setups that are really just like bossing setups that are really only there to dumpster Aberoth. And some of them are bugged, some of them are Event Horizon builds, some of them are just like extreme outliers. Static Orb is like the highest damage. Someone's going to prove me wrong. And if you can prove me wrong, I would love to see it. I love that kind of thing. I think Static Orb is the highest damage non-bugged thing in the game right now. Like, it's not Event Horizon. It's not a single target setup, for memes with Event Horizon. It's not bugged. It's just incredibly fucking strong and deals way too much damage. It scales so hard with something that specifically got buffed with a whole bunch of synergy. This mana scaling, probably the thing that's got to be toned down. As long as we're talking about Static Orb, can we please play Orbit Static Orb again? Please? Can I play Yo-Yo Static Orb? There's going to be people out there, when I say Yo-Yo Static Orb, they're going to say, like, literally, what the hell are you talking about? I loved Yo-Yo Static Orb. And then they nerfed Orbit Static Orb and Yo-Yo Static Orb, and it was such a weird nerf that I literally asked EHG. I said, was it intentional that you nerfed Yo-Yo Static Orb at the same time as Orbit Static Orb? Because everybody's playing Orbit Static Orb, and you nerfed the Yo-Yo. What? And they said, yeah, it was intentional. Let me play with my Yo-Yo. Next up, We were looking at nodes that stack too much. We were looking at nodes and items that don't have cooldowns, and maybe they could have items or could have cooldowns or need cooldowns, or maybe in the minds of EHG, maybe they think they need cooldowns. So we were looking at something that adds a lot of damage and stacks up pretty well, and that is Smoky Bomb. Smoke Bomb's flat damage. Smoke Bomb has a node in it that gives you flat melee and throwing damage, and it stacks up. It's called like Smoke Blades or something like that. It's on the bottom left of the skill tree. That node stacking over time is really strong, especially with Shadow Daggers. So nerfing this would definitely nerf Shadow Daggers at the same time. But I don't think Smoke Bomb as a whole is like an offensive skill. It's a movement skill. It can generate dust shrouds. The top left of the Smoke Bomb skill tree, I think, is pretty bad. It's really not used for anything. That's kind of like free real estate that EHG should, truncate, delete, and then revamp. But I think this particular node right here, I would be unsurprised. Does it need to be nerfed? I don't think so. But it is a really strong node that kind of is an outlier in the rest of the Smoke Bomb skill tree. All right, let's keep going. We've got 3 more things to talk about. Oh, I really like the last one. Okay, let's go this. This skill is, oh man, what do I say about this node? The node we're about to talk about, when I talk about Sentinels being squishy, Sentinels are the squishiest class in Last Epoch. Sometimes it don't feel that way. The baseline for tankiness on a Sentinel is quite high, but the ceiling for how tanky they can get is lower than other classes in the game. When I talk about how squishy they are, I'm worried that EHG is like, well, what about Rebuke? If you're squishy, you could just use Rebuke. Why didn't I think of that? Because I hate it. Everybody hates Rebuke. The difference in a build that is of a player, not a build, but a person who's willing to put Rebuke in their build and a person who's unwilling to put Rebuke in the build, those are 2 different video games, because Rebuke is so fucking strong and it's so boring. You're just like, I'm gonna stand here, boom, and then I'm gonna fight for 3 seconds, and then I'm gonna stand here, and I'm gonna stand here, and then I'm gonna fight for 3 seconds. It's terrible. It is not the kind of thing that should be in the game. Delete it, rework it, substantially change it in some way. I hate it so much. It actually occurs to me that there is an item that I wanted to put on this list that is not included on this list. Remind me about this, Twitch chat. Huh? Yeah? Remind me? We'll talk about 1 additional item at the very end of this, but we got 2 more to go. This one here, we have a Primalist skill. And it's even a skill that we put on our list from 2 years ago. So we're going to type in Earthquake. Earthquake did just get nerfed recently. It turns out the Shatterquake node in Earthquake was bugged. So they fixed it at the same time that they fixed Serpent Strike being OP. My build. And then they felt so bad for everybody who was playing Earthquake and Serpent Strike that they buffed Earthquake and nothing else. So when they buffed Earthquake with the compensation for the nerf that had previously taken place, the bug fix, they accidentally basically reintroduced the bug. So damage over time Earthquake, you 1.1 gamers out there right now, dot Earthquake is completely insane because it's bugged. So why is Earthquake included here? Earthquake is a good example of an old skill in Last Epoch. Basically, it hasn't been updated for quite a long time. Ignore these Stormbolt nodes. We're not talking about those. They're kind of bad too. But Earthquake is kind of an old skill because it has so many more multipliers on the skill tree, and they're all insane. They're just like, oh, 200% more damage here, 100% more damage here, 130% more damage over here. And you take all the damage nodes, and it's fucking insane. And it's balanced around being a high mana cost skill, but you just fix the mana cost and you're left with this giga insane skill. So we've seen multiple times that like people can fix the mana cost. So should EHG nerf the mana cost? No, I don't think that's the right solution. Should they make it more interesting? Should they add additional nodes, more synergy? Should they make use of the top left of the skill tree, which is like the garbage Stormbolt stuff? Should they just maybe tone down some of the more multipliers? Maybe. But something about Earthquake, it's just like, it's an old skill that has so many more multipliers on it. Take a look at Earthquake and compare it to like God, what's the skill called? Um, I want to. Man, I'm so cooked. It's volcanic orb. There we go. Volcanic orb and earthquake are both similarly old skills, and they represent the old way that EHG would build skill trees. It's just that earthquake happens to be giga OP and old, and volcanic orb is pretty not power. Like I know. There's good builds out there that make use of it. Shut up. It's old, it's bad, and I can't wait for the volcanic orb skill tree to be revisited at some point. Because there's so much garbage in the skill tree, and there's so many question marks. Like, why is this here? Why is this here? Why does this do this? And like, sure, there's a good use case for it, but that does not mean that it shouldn't be fixed. Volcanic orb should absolutely be fixed, and it's gonna make so many people happy when it does get fixed because it's like an iconic skill, and all those OG boomers out there are like, oh, I want to play ice or volcanic. Wait, what's it called? Ice orb? Frozen orb? Frozen orb. That sounds right. I want to play Frozen Orb from Diablo 2. All right, listen, I get it. But like Earthquake, pretty strong, represents an old way for them to design skills, and I will be unsurprised when it gets nerfed or changed at some point. The last one here, the very last one is something that I've complained about a little bit. This is an example of something that is basically not used. These days it's used a little bit more, but it's basically not used. And when it is used, it's completely insane. So it's either not a part of your build at all, but if you do build around it, it's fucked. Like it's so strong. For those of you who follow my YouTube builds, you know which one we're talking about. This is Druid's 70% DR from the Mastery bonus. So when you leave a transformed state for like the next 5 seconds or something, you get 70% damage reduction, which is so stupid. And like these days, we have people that are form swapping to like fix their mana for like earthquake builds or for tornado builds, for example, or 2 seconds. This 70% DR, you basically you don't build around it, and if you do build around it, it's completely cracked. So like this, it'd be unsurprising to me if you ask somebody, someone who's only been playing the game since like 1.0, for example, well, what's Druid's Mastery? They literally wouldn't know. Some people would tell you, oh, you get percent health, percent mana. And then like 10% of people would be like, oh yeah, there's this random text that sometimes make you giga tanky. Like, it's such nonsense. This has got to change. Druid's Mastery just being percent health, percent mana is so boring compared to the recent additions to the game. Things like Falconer, things like Rune Master, things like even Warlock gets, hybrid resistance and more damage per cursed on the enemy. Like those things are really interesting. Just getting health and mana, and then this random garbage that's either completely ignored or completely insane. This DR from this reminds me of what Twitch chat said just a couple of minutes ago about Wrong Warp. Being that tanky, being invulnerable 1/5 of the time. Like that's not why you're using the item. You just happen to get the invulnerability. You're not building around this. You just happen to get 70% DR every once in a while. Yeah, kind of nuts. Remove the DR and get a more damage percent for attribute when transformed. Sure, dude. Change it to something else. I like scaling things. The new Void Knight one, where it gives you like more melee void damage per vitality. That's kind of cool. Things that like they don't necessarily give you power up front, but they give you a new avenue so you can build power yourself. I like those kinds of things. Not everything needs to be the same, but I do like that. All right, so here's our 1.2 or later, whenever we decide to revisit this, Nerf Bingo. And I mentioned there's one more thing in here, and it's kind of rambly. I'll try not to ramble too much. There's one thing in here that I actually forgot to include. This is a good one. We're not going to change it. We're not going to go back and fix it. It's fine. But there is one thing in here that I wanted to call out. I forgot to. And it's an item. And I've been on Ask the Devs on Discord. And I've asked Mike. I said, Mike, dual wielding. Come on, Mike. It makes you take percent increased damage, but you're already giving up the opportunity cost of using a shield, right? And you're already giving up the opportunity cost of using a two-hander plus a Titan Heart. And his response to me was, first of all, get wrecked, dude. Or get wrecked, nerd. But his response to me was, if Titan Heart is the draw for using a two-hander, then maybe Titan Heart's too strong. And I said, oh shit, now it's on his radar. Oh no. No, don't do it. I love Titan Heart. So for the record, I do not think that Titan Heart needs a nerf. I think Titan Heart needs more competition. And the addition of, oh man, Twitch chat, help me. There's a new body armor that drops from Aberoth. It's got like Fizz, Res, plus health on it. Gives you less damage taken per stuff. You know what I mean? What's that one called? Twitch chat's going to tell me in a second. The addition of Null Portent is a wonderful addition to the game. Not only because you can use it on a one-handed plus shield build, but it also is a different way of building even more defense than a Titan Heart has access to. Titan Heart's 15% less damage taken, and Null Portent is up to 20% less damage taken if you fulfill the requirement of building enough resistance on it. So like, I'm worried that me complaining about dual wield, and like truly, I do think the dual wield penalty should be removed because it's so dumb. There's a lot of damage in the game, especially with the 1.1 event and the new monsters being introduced during this event here. Titan Heart is not OP. It is a good option among relatively poor options. The good options that compete with Titan Heart are things like a champion regalia that a Sentinel has access to because it has 700 flat armor on it. That's awesome. And then, you know, you can craft a Null Portent better than you can craft, or then you can farm up and then subsequently craft a Titan Heart. So like, Titan Heart's wonderful, but it really, 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 Mike, does not need a nerf. I think that's going to be my justification. My justification for not putting on this list is that I think EHG has it on their radar for things that could be nerfed in the future. Really, really should not be nerfed. It's definitely something that needs more competition, and it should. Don't fucking nerf it. Twitch chat's gonna come after me if you nerf it. So there's the ramble about Titan Heart. Don't you nerf it. But here's our 1.2 thing. We'll revisit this in the future. If you like this kind of content, let me know in the comments section. If your 1.2 bingo card would have something else on it instead, let me know as well. But this is fun to talk about things like this. We'll see you next time.